The Viper is an outstanding training aid, but it is also one that requires athletes and coaches to practice certain safety precautions at all times. First, under no circumstances is the Viper designed for horseplay. Many of the drills conducted with the Viper involve stretching the 8-foot flexicord. The tension that is placed on the Viper's flexicord is capable of numerous unique training benefits, but it is also capable of causing injury if misused. Coaches and athletes using the Viper must understand that they are engaged in serious training and not casual play. Second, the Viper's flexicord is 8 feet long and is designed to be stretched to a maximum distance of 20 feet. Overstretching the flexicord could cause the flexicord to rupture or could cause components of the belt or handle attachment to break due to excess force. To avoid unintentional overstretching, cones marking the maximum stretch limit should be used at all times. It should be noted that some Viper drills cover more than 20 feet, but in such circumstances, the anchor athlete is moving with the athlete being trained so that separation is never more than 20 feet. The Viper's flexicord is designed to be attached to the padded Viper waist belt and/or the Viper handle strap. No other devices should be used to secure either end of the flexicord. When attaching the flexicord to the waist belt, only one end of the flexicord should be attached to any of the individual metal rings at one time. Both ends of the flexicord may be secured to separate metal rings at the same time, but not to the same metal ring at one time. Athletes and coaches should inspect the attachment points on the waist belt before each use for signs of wear or damage. If either is discovered, the belt should not be used. When only one end of the flexicord is attached to the Viper's waist belt, the other end must be secured to the Viper's attachment handle. This handle may be wrapped around a sturdy stationary object like a goalpost, worn around the waist of a second athlete, or held in the hand of a second athlete. When this third method is used, the athlete should insert his or her hand through the handle's loop and then firmly grasp the strap. Athletes wearing the Viper's waist belt must be conscious of how they connect the front buckle. The male end of the buckle should be inserted straight into the female end so that both teeth on the male end click into place. If the athlete does not connect the buckle properly, only one of the teeth will click into place and may cause the buckle to come unfastened during use. Lateral let-goes are performed by removing the flexicord component and using only the waist belt and handle attachment. The athlete will begin on the starting line in a lateral position with the handle and training partner positioned on his trail hip. The athlete will then move laterally against the resistance of the partner for 3 to 7 yards. At the designated mark, the partner will release the athlete, and the athlete will turn and sprint for the other half of the marked distance. The athlete's goal is to focus on proper slide mechanics, where the trail leg pushes like a piston, the lead leg pulls, and one foot is always in contact with the ground. The athlete should react to, rather than anticipate, the release of the handle. At the point of release, the athlete should snap his hips from a lateral to linear plane and then accelerate through the end of the marked distance. It is important that the partner give just enough resistance to slow the athlete's slide, not so much resistance that the athlete can't slide at all. Also, the point of release is the most important part of the drill. The athlete should focus on being quick and explosive at the point of release, not just during the portion where he is being resisted. An athlete that fails to accelerate through the final cone is defeating the point of the exercise. In this drill, the flexicord component will be used to assist the athlete through a lateral slide and through the transition into a linear sprint. The athlete begins in a lateral position with the flexicord attached to the lead hip. The partner then walks out to a distance of 10 to 12 feet, so the flexicord is pulling at the athlete's lead hip. The athlete will initiate this drill by beginning the lateral slide motion. The partner will then begin to move so the distance between the two is maintained while the athlete is moving. At the halfway mark of this distance, the athlete turns and sprints through the final cone. As with all lateral drills, it is important that the athlete perform equal repetitions to the left and right. To play lockdown defense, an athlete must be able to quickly move both to the left and right and be able to smoothly transition between the two. Performing lateral W slides with the resistance and assistance of a flexicord is the perfect training mechanism for developing this skill. Lateral W slides are performed by setting up a series of cones in a W configuration with 2 to 3 yards of separation between each cone. The athlete begins at the first cone with the flexicord on his hip and the training partner spaced about 10 to 12 feet away so the flexicord is slightly stretched. The athlete performs the drill by sliding laterally around each cone in the W configuration. The partner moves with the athlete so the flexicord remains consistently stretched to the athlete's side during the entire repetition. The box drill is one of those exercises that is so fun athletes forget just how hard they are working. This drill is set up using cones to create a square that is 3 to 5 yards wide. The athlete is placed in the middle with the flexicord connected to his left or right hip. A partner anchors the flexicord to provide resistance. A second partner is positioned in front of the athlete with a dozen tennis balls. The drill begins when the partner begins tossing tennis balls inside the square. It is the athlete's job to keep the square clean of any debris. To accomplish this, the athlete must sprint to all 4 corners of the square, stop, change direction, and react to the movement of the tennis balls. As the athlete moves, he is resisted and assisted by the pull of the flexicord. In this example, the partner anchoring the flexicord is moving around the box during the repetition. This causes the direction of the flexicord's pull to change throughout the repetition and forces the athlete to quickly compensate for the changes as he moves. Athletes often have to sprint forward, stop, and then transition into a back pedal. The linear W sprint uses flexicord to isolate and train this motion. This drill involves setting up cones in a W configuration with about 5 yards of spacing between each cone. The athlete attaches the flexicord to either the front or back of the belt, and a partner anchors the other end of the flexicord 10 to 12 feet away from the athlete. The athlete initiates the drill by sprinting to the first cone in the series. The athlete then plants at the cone and backpedals to the cone behind it. As the athlete switches between sprinting and backpedaling, the flexicord is alternately applying resistance and assistance. Note that the placement of the flexicord on either the front or back of the belt will determine whether resistance or assistance is applied to each phase of this exercise. Lateral W sprints require setting up 5 to 7 cones in a W configuration with 5 to 7 yards of spacing between each cone. The athlete then sprints through the cones in a zigzag pattern. As the athlete sprints towards the flexicord, he will be assisted, and then will be resisted when sprinting away from the flexicord. As the athlete sprints through the cones, the partner must move with the athlete to maintain spacing and to ensure that the flexicord is not stretched further than 20 feet. It should be the goal of the athlete to run the cones as quickly as possible, with an emphasis on the change of direction that takes place at each cone. The aim is to change direction by making one hard step, rather than a series of short, choppy steps. The triangle drill is unmatched at training the change of direction speed needed by athletes competing in close quarters. Set this drill up by placing 3 cones 2 to 3 yards apart in a triangle configuration. The athlete begins facing the top point of the triangle with the flexicord attached to his back and his partner spaced 10 to 12 feet behind. The flexicord should be taut but not fully stretched. The athlete initiates the drill by sprinting around the bottom left-hand corner of the triangle, then inside the bottom right-hand corner, back around the bottom left-hand corner, and then back down the home stretch past the original starting point. The athlete should aim to maintain as tight a path to the triangle as possible while dropping his hips in the corners and accelerating in the straightaways. Figure eights is another drill designed to enhance an athlete's ability to quickly accelerate and change direction in small areas. This drill begins by using cones to create 2 circles, each approximately 2 yards in width. The athlete begins at the top of the first circle with the flexicord connected to his hip, and his partner positioned 10 to 12 feet away. The athlete initiates the drill by sprinting into the first circle and then through the entire figure eight configuration. The partner should move with the athlete throughout the entire drill and should pull the athlete out of the final turn by jogging away from it. As with other drills that involve pathways, the athlete should focus on staying low to the ground and generating rapid, powerful turnover in the upper body. Another unique and important skill for defensive athletes is the ability to quickly backpedal and then smoothly turn 180 degrees and transition into a linear sprint.
Athletes that are proficient at this skill are able to keep the action of the game in front of them as they backpedal, and then keep themselves involved in the action as it moves down the field. This drill begins by attaching the flexicord to the back of the athlete and spacing the partner 10 to 12 feet behind the athlete. The athlete begins the drill by backpedaling a predetermined distance and then snapping his hips around and transitioning into a linear sprint for the remaining marked distance. The partner should move with the athlete to keep constant tension on the flexicord. The pull of the flexicord during the backpedal and the transition to the linear sprint makes these motions extremely challenging. This change of direction drill incorporates an element of reaction. The athlete begins with the flexicord connected to the front of his belt and his training partner positioned directly in front of him. Note that there is slack in the flexicord at the beginning of the drill. The athlete is positioned between two cones spaced 5 yards apart, with a third cone 5 yards directly behind him. The athlete begins the drill by backpedaling to the cone behind him. During the backpedal, the partner will begin to move towards one of the original two cones the athlete was positioned between. Once the athlete reaches the rear cone in his backpedal, he must read the direction of his partner's movement and break out of his backpedal into a full-speed sprint through the cone the partner moves towards. Note that the partner moves flat towards one of the two cones and does not start moving away from the athlete until the athlete begins his sprint through the cone.